All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Katy Gostaspi. Welcome to the Katy G podcast series. The mission of my podcast is for us to realize that we're all really great. We can be even greater. And most importantly, how can we bring this greatness to the world through a brand, your brand? And so why the Katy G podcasts? Two reasons. One, I truly care about humanity deeply, and I want us all to see how great we are and that we matter and we really are meant to be happier. And two, I have the same issues everyone else does. And sometimes I feel less than just like everyone else. And some days are good, some days are bad. So there's a lot of benefit to be had from these podcasts and from sharing these podcasts. So this time, I have a very special guest for us, Erin Bethge. Erin, I'm going to let you give us your full introduction. Erin is a financial advisor, and I will let you take it from there. Welcome, Erin.
Oh, thank you, Katy. I'm very excited to be here today. This is actually the first time I've done something like this, so thank you for inviting
Fantastic.
me.
You're welcome.
So, I am a certified financial planner on a team, Wardine Wealth Management of Raymond James. And specifically, what I do is I coach families by building relationships where I really get their needs and wants. This is important because this is going to allow me to build a plan that's tailored just for them, giving them the confidence they need to make sound, educated decisions for their families long term. Now, when you work with me, you work with family. I am the daughter of a father-daughter advisement team, and together we have nearly 50 years of experience at this point, which is such a big number. So we really focus on
That's fantastic.
I know it's when I said that, I just took myself by surprise. But family is very important to us, and we keep it small. You know, we're very passionate about education and making sure that people have the financial literacy they need. And for my part on the team, this really starts when they're kind of a younger professional. I really focus on making sure they understand the employee benefits they have available to them, really to make sure that they are not leaving any free money on the table. Especially in California, they need to be able to get ahead somehow. And if you're leaving free money on the table, you know, that's the easiest way to kind of get a jump start so that they can start developing the picture and kind of see, you know, what can be possible in their future.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let me backtrack a little bit. Folks, the reason I know Erin and her dad is because they were clients at one point. So I know the layout in the firm, but you guys don't. So Erin, let's go back a little bit and tell us, how did you decide you wanted to be a financial planner?
Yeah, that is a good question, and it is not something that I ever planned on doing. Obviously, I'm very familiar with the profession. I grew up with my dad being a financial advisor, and so this is really my second career. I was fortunate to attend Arizona State University on a softball scholarship. I went out there just out of high school. Life happened, and I ended up spending 17 years in Arizona. That was never my plan, but it was great. I loved it. Typical, met my husband in college and started our family from there. And it was one visit that my parents, they were visiting us in November of 2014, to be specific. And my dad was talking to me about just talking in general about the struggles he was having, trying to find somebody that he felt comfortable taking over the practice. And so just kind of out of the blue, I said, well, why have you never talked to me about this? And he said, well, I would love to talk to you about that, but you would have to move to California. And I don't know if that's an option. And I said to him, I said, I don't know if that's an option, but you know, I'd kind of like the benefit of the conversation. And I remember running upstairs and telling my husband, Max, right away, I'm like, hey, I'm going to talk to my dad. I don't know what's going to happen, but he wants to talk to me about going into business with him. So fast forward to July of 2015, we made the move, my husband, Max, and I, and our three kids from Arizona to San Diego. And I think that, you know, for me, it just felt right. I was comfortable. I knew that it was going to be great working with my dad. I never thought I would have that opportunity, but he was my softball coach growing up. And so we really settled back into the relationship of coach and player. So I knew that I had somebody who had my back, who wanted me to be successful, who was going to work with me and do everything he had to make me successful. And so the financial services industry can be very risky to get into, because the statistics on the number of advisors who are successful is pretty low, and that can be daunting. But for me, I came into an established team. Not only does my boss have my best interests, he has my kids' best interests, my husband's best interests, but then for our existing clients, there's continuity. It's like, oh my gosh, his daughter's coming in, so that kind of started to snowball from there. So the brief story, but it's not something I ever thought I was going to do, but it's been 5 years already, and I'm just
Wow.
so happy to have had this opportunity to have a different relationship with my dad in adulthood, for him to see me excel in what we do, for me to see him totally in his groove doing his thing with clients. It's just a different dynamic that I never thought that I would experience with my dad, and I'm so
Yeah,
thankful.
isn't that? And you said so many great things there. I need time to unpack them all. But the thing that you just mentioned, it's so interesting seeing parents and family and loved ones and people social, even from a different vantage point professionally, right? It's just
Mhm.
like, who are you? What do you do? And it's
Mhm.
nice to be part of that. It really
Mhm.
does. I really want to applaud you both. So I work with a lot of financial advisors. I did in my first career as a securities lawyer. Some of you listeners may not know that, but I was in compliance and regulatory. So I used to regulate and oversee people like Erin, advisors. And now in the branding world, once again, I work with them because I understand the branding and marketing and the story side of it and how to have them distinguish themselves and stand out. So, Erin's story is a good one. It's about adapting, it's about being open to things. And talk to me a little bit because, I went through a career change too. But I didn't do it with moving my family and my spouse, which, yes, I guess some would say, oh, well, she had the comfort of knowing she's going into her dad's practice. I don't think that's fair because that's still a big change,
Mhm.
regardless. You still didn't know what you're walking into. And take that um, conversation and explain how you're going to explain it and tie it into what you're experiencing now with COVID-19 and what you think people could learn from that and being able to pivot and change.
Sure. So that was a huge pivot, and definitely kind of a career defining moment and just a life defining moment. And I have to give so much credit to my husband. I mean, honestly, if I didn't have the support of Max and just the belief that he has in me and just the freedom to kind of make the decisions that I want to make, I mean, I would not be where I am today without him. And I'm so lucky that I met him, and it's just it really really works for us. So that, knowing that I had his support, and that we're a total team, that gave me the confidence that I need to move here. And it's like Max and I, obviously we've been through things, as everybody has been in marriage, but we are always able to communicate with one another. And so I think that that really gave me the confidence to just say, okay, like, we can do this. We had the big picture in mind. We knew financially the potential that this had for the family, and then personally the potential that this had for my kids to be around my parents all the time. You
Yeah,
know,
and
so
also for you to be fulfilled career wise, right?
exactly, exactly. And I was nervous. I had a great job before. I was in leadership, coaching and development at the University of Phoenix prior to taking on this advisor role. And it was a lot of coaching behaviors and trying to understand people and what makes them tick and why do they come at life the way that they do. And so that I was very good at that. And I knew that I had learned skills, at my prior job. And I'm like, well, are these going to be transferable? And what I saw immediately when I started talking to clients is everything I did at the University of Phoenix was so transferable. And it was all of the things that I love to do there. So, Katy, as you know, I mean, you've dealt with advisors, and money is very personal, and you have
Yeah.
to be able to talk to people when they're upset, when they're unsure. And it's not giving them answers. You're not trying to solve their problems, but you have to understand. You have to just listen and try and pick out things like, okay, well, perhaps this is why they think that, or that's why they think that. And then you just ask more and more questions to really understand. And by the time they're done talking, they feel better. And you've learned so much about that client that you can then build on in the future. So I think that that was my huge pivot, like taking what I learned, knowing that I learned valuable skills, as a leader at University of Phoenix, and then applying that to my job here. So then gaining the trust over the years and the clients really help prepare us for what's going on right now. So I
Yeah.
was having conversations earlier, with a group of professionals, and we talked about the word pivot and how people in the COVID-19 environment, those who have been able to adapt and pivot and do things differently, have actually thrived in this environment. And in most cases, they've reached fulfillment that they didn't have before and probably never thought that they would have.
Right? Or
Unfortunately,
something happens, you don't know, right?
I know. And unfortunately, there are people who haven't been able to pivot and their business is just dying. And so I don't know where that comes from. I'd love to have conversations with those people to try and understand, why that is the way it is. But I would say, for us, my dad is very, very old school. He's been in the business for, over 40 years at this point, and he was always of the belief that clients wanted you face to face. You needed to have FaceTime with the clients to make them feel comfortable, to, make sure they still trusted you because you're managing, their lives from a financial standpoint. And what we've seen, we were forced into this situation. Would we have chosen to work from home? No. However, really, this has been awesome for my dad. He was of the belief FaceTime, you can't be as productive as you are working from home. And he has found the opposite. Clients have been so great about jumping on a Zoom. We've had to walk a lot of them through how to actually access and what you do and that sort of
Sure.
thing. But once they do it for the first time, it's as if we're sitting right there with them. Nobody has to drive anywhere. You're healthy. It saves so much time because being down here in San Diego, we would drive a lot up to Orange County and Los Angeles. And this has brought just so much time into our days. And so earlier when I spoke about fulfillment, I mean, I am so much more efficient because I'm not driving, I'm not doing various activities, that I have more time for clients to do different sort of things with clients, and then just more time with my family. And I know that my dad has found that same thing. So he
Such
has said
silver
that he's never going to go back to the office.
Such silver linings. And I really commend you both, especially your father, you obviously, but like you said, when you have been doing something a certain way for a certain number of years, over 30 years, guys, right? It's
Mhm.
it's it's not that it's just inconceivable. It's always worked. So why would I try something new? However, my hat's off to him because yes, he was forced in the situation, but to your point, he could have not. And then
Mhm.
it's like that stiff tree in the wind that once the wind
Mhm.
hits it, it breaks and snaps instead of just the beautiful willow tree that just goes with the flow, as Louise Hay says. If you're not familiar with Louise Hay's, listeners, Google her, hayhouse.com. And then things pass and you get to new results. And, I love what you said. You said, I don't know why some people don't adapt. Well, according to my research, it's a huge part of the population and it's fear-based, just like
Mhm.
everything else. Erin, you've heard me say this before in our work together. There's a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum is love, and I'm not talking about mushy romantic love at work. I'm just talking about kindness, caring, self-care, whatever that translates into, positivity. On the other end of the spectrum is fear, and fear often manifests in what harm will come of me if I do something different. And that's really based on the notion that we don't have faith that things will work out. If you really look at the root of what you just said, you and me and other entrepreneurs, that were like, well, all right, we got to do this, but I guess I could stick my head in the sand or go hide in the closet and kick and scream and refuse. I'm just going to try it because I have faith that things will work out because they have in the past, right? We're
Mhm.
here. And so, and then this is not religious faith at all. This is just like a greater belief that everything is okay and all is well, and that I can just relax and do my thing. And I always say curious brands win, right? Like you two were curious to see how this worked out. You have, as a result, cultivated clients from your brand that are also curious, that said, I don't know what Zoom is, but I'll give it a try because, let's try something new. I'm going to stay curious instead of staying in judgment.
Mhm.
So I totally think you and Gary have done that beautifully. Your clients are benefiting, you're benefiting. What would you say has been the biggest lesson, if you could summarize it, for your clients in all of this? Or what you've tried to teach them, perhaps?
I think just being flexible because I kind of considered myself a fairly flexible person, but I realized that when I was at work, I wasn't as flexible as I thought that I was, so I would follow my dad in that, okay, yes, we have to drive and clients want us to be there. And, that just wasn't the case. And so I was forced into doing something different. And now that's taught me to be like, okay, well, I can't assume, I can't well, this is the way that we've always done it, and this is how clients want it. I need to ask the questions. And perhaps with clients, that is how they want it done. But, I've learned that that can't be my go to. That can't, I should not make assumptions. And that's number one. And number two, my dad is capable of a lot more than he gives
Mhm.
himself credit for. The fact that he's happy, the fact that he's productive, probably more productive, uh, you know, I just need to make sure that he knows I mean, how he gets, I try and give him very specific compliments to build on that behavior and have him continue to do what it is that I think is working for him. But I think that just reminding him, hey, you're a lot smarter in certain ways than you think you are, and you're a lot more patient, and you have a lot more to give in certain ways than you think you do, and just kind of use that and be okay with that.
That's fantastic. What would you say would be your one biggest advice for listeners who have never had a financial advisor or are seeking a new route to a new financial advisor, but don't exactly know what to do, especially now? I mean, I was looking at our portfolio just the other day online, and I was laughing at the numbers, the way they looked in March versus what they look like now, right? And that's
Hmm.
just one aspect of it. And look, I understand the industry very well, but I've never been an investment advisor. So I was like, well, good thing I listened to my advisor instead of like freaking out looking at the numbers in March and just losing my mind, right? So, what advice do you have for people who are looking for an advisor?
Yes. And I get this question a lot, and I think that, in our industry there is a misconception that you have to have all of this money before anybody will talk to you, and that is just not the case. And so oftentimes people will ask me, "Well, what should I look out for from a referral standpoint?" And I say to them, if you have somebody that says to you, "Oh, I don't have enough money to work with an advisor," that's when you give them my information, because I want to talk to them. Whether or not they have money to invest with me, they still have some sort of asset, or they have debt or something. There's always something that I can coach them through. And oftentimes, with the younger people, it's making sure they're taking advantage of their 401k if it's available to them. It's looking over the investment options that they do have. And I'm happy to give my time to them because, as I mentioned earlier, I want people work hard, and I want you to pay yourself back. And oftentimes, the earliest and best way you can pay yourself back is maximizing whatever you have available to you from a retirement standpoint. And don't be intimidated by financial advisors. So I think that that's really resonated with people. Like, because how many times do you say, "Oh, I don't have enough money to work with somebody"? If you hear that, I'm the perfect fit for that person, just for an initial conversation. And for the people who already have advisors, hopefully they're being coached well. And Katy, you said it earlier, like the biggest mistake you can do is make a rash decision and pull all of your money out based off of emotion and fear. Like that is the worst thing, that you can do. But that's easier said than done, because if you're looking at your
Yeah.
statement and it's going down and down and down, you're like, I have to get out now. But there's never been a time in the history of the markets where it hasn't recovered and recovered to higher levels than it ever has been before. So a lot goes into that. As you know, somebody could be 63 years old and wanting to retire at 65. So that's a much different conversation, and that's much more difficult for them to stay in the market because they just don't have the time that I would have to recover what they've lost in the market. But
No, fair enough, fair enough. But I think it goes back to the F word, faith, right? Because I
Mhm.
remember back in March when we met with our advisor on Zoom, I was like, I know what you're going to say, but it's just really creepy watching these numbers drop
Mhm.
every day. And, we were told exactly what you said every wise advisor would say. And what I teach my clients too, like nothing comes from negative emotion and fear. You just do not act from that place. No one buys anything, no one sells anything, and no rash action is
Right.
born of that fear. So having that faith is a little it's a better way to look at life,
I
definitely.
think so. Well, and I mean, you and I operate similarly in that when you're working with your clients, you have a plan. It's you're talking to them, you're understanding what it is that they need, what they want, and here's our plan to get you from where you are today to where you want to be. And that's no different in what it is that I do. And so in these environments, I always go back to the plan. Like, okay, well, this is what's happening. This is what your assets are. Have your goals changed? Has your timeline changed? And when you can show them physically on a plan, you are still okay, even with what's going on, that makes the conversation much easier because it takes the emotion out of it. It's, hey, the market's going crazy. We can't control that, but we can control different things that we've put into your plan from a goal perspective and from a timing perspective. Are we still okay? Yes, then that oftentimes will get them off the ledge.
And to summarize that, I often think, and I used to think this when I was in compliance to monitoring advisors and setting up the investment advisor registration depository and all that good stuff. Being a good financial advisor, a sound, effective, compliant investment advisor is 50% the numbers and the substantive and the left brain linear. But I truly believe it's a full on 50% the counselor and the
Mhm.
compassionate one, and like you were talking about earlier, communication. In month 6, week 6 now of boot camp, we talk about effective communication of your brand. So every advisor really needs to know, how do I communicate with what Chris Voss coined, and I use the term tactical empathy with my clients, so that I'm a good listener and that I make them feel good, truly, not just because everyone should feel good from a relationship perspective with their clients, but that makes them feel like they can sleep well at night
Mhm.
from a consultative perspective of, I get you, I hear you, I care about your feelings and emotions. And like you said at the beginning, money is one of the most emotional components to our lives. People do
Mhm.
strange things for money. I can't say I've been immune to that. No one has ever been immune to that unless
Mhm.
they've been sainted, and then we just don't know about it. But it's a weird thing. Money is not evil. It's just when we treat money as the root of all evil, and we start respecting it in a way that doesn't respect us as human beings, I think
Mhm.
that becomes the problem, and that's where the
Mhm.
emotion takes over. So your job is not an easy one at all, and it takes a special person to do it well. There's plenty of people doing it, and I'm not passing judgment, but I think to be the fiduciary and to be the professional and to truly show that you care about your clients is a very tactical but also very harmonized brand, I think, is what I want
Mhm.
to say, if I'm making sense.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, Gary and I have different, skill sets for sure. And everything you said, I completely agree. And earlier when I said that he doesn't give himself enough credit, typically he'll kind of tell clients, "Oh, I'm the numbers guy and Erin is like the feelings person, but you know him so well and he does so well and he's so calming and the way that he talks to clients, I mean, it's art, honestly, when you say it, and I'll tell people I liken our relationship, my dad and I, where when we're building proposals and plans and that sort of thing, he's the science, and I'm the art completely, like in that dynamic. But when we're talking to them about their emotions and their fears and their thoughts and that sort of thing, he is just as good as anybody out there, and I think it shows, if you were to talk to our clients, I mean, they would say the same thing.
Well,
So,
of course, that kind of longevity does not come from not being able to do that, right?
that's very true.
Absolutely. So let's switch gears now, Erin. I
Yeah.
find in these podcasts that our audience learns super well when you, the guest, is willing to be coached and come to the table with something that's on your mind or an issue you have outstanding, and we work through it together. So, are you
Okay.
ready for that?
I am, yes.
All right. So, what's been on your mind? What's the issue we can talk through and I can coach you through?
Sure. And I don't know if this is going to be too broad, so kind of steer me if necessary, but COVID has kind of changed everything. And then it's not just COVID. Within COVID, we've had so many other traumatic events, that we have witnessed and seen in the
Yeah.
United States. And I was listening to something just the other day and it was all about what is your legacy? Like what legacy are you creating for yourself personally, professionally, with your family, and what have you. And so when I look at COVID and when I look at things, like George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and that sort of thing, I kind of come to legacy as a whole, but it needs to incorporate like all of those things. And my husband and I talk about this often. We've had many conversations with our kids just, about, Black Lives Matter in general. And it's like, what legacy am I going to create for my family and for my kids so that the change that is truly needed in the United States is something that I can start with my kids?
That's beautiful. That's fantastic. First of all, I applaud you and Max for having that conversation, not just with your kids, with yourself. So, for all the listeners out there without children, I think that's important. And I think if I was to translate the word legacy, I would, for those of you who want to spin it differently or see it differently, it's purpose. What purpose are
Mhm.
you serving in the world to make it a better place? And as a result of serving that purpose, then you do leave a legacy. So, what is the question embedded in that very wise statement you just made, Miss Erin?
How Oh, let's see. I
Yeah,
mean, how do I do something that's measurable, that's making a difference, because everything I've been reading a lot of books and I've been just educating myself, on just kind of the Black experience over time and so forth. And that was advice that, I heard somebody say, it's kind of like, well, where do you get your information, about being Black in America? And so he kind of recommended these books and so forth. And so how is it like, what are the I guess what actions can I take? What
yeah,
can I
yeah, fair enough. So that's a very good question. And I think it comes down to, and for the audience, I've worked with Erin, so I've got a little bit of, I'm up to speed on her brand, but really comes down to looking at, stepping back and looking at your brand and considering what is it that you stand for? And what
Okay.
is it that you enunciate and message out to your target audience? And you guys have a target audience because we've established that through our work together. And where can you take your core values and have them lead you to educating a broader subset of your audience, i.e., those who are not your clients yet, but your prospective clients, and then some. We'll just look at it from that narrower view. And then you're like, well, okay, well, what am I educating them on? Well, exactly what you said. What purpose do you believe you serve in all of this? Where can you, Erin Bethge, have a voice with your expertise as an advisor, as a mom, as a
Mhm.
spouse, as a daughter, all of those you have expertise in that maybe arguably other people have expertise in. But again, look, through the brand filtered vantage point, your unique selling proposition, it's going to be very different way of expressing that expertise packaged as a mom, a daughter, an advisor, a parent, a softball player, softball coach, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
So, where can you bring that to use your voice and educate people? Because we all think, oh, who am I to educate people on race and discrimination and diversity and inclusion? I'm not Martin Luther King. I'm not, oh,
Right.
and name some of the greats, right?
Mhm.
Who are we not, right? It's everyone's job not to go around and police people. Please don't do that. Like that
Mhm.
just never works, right? Walking
Right.
around and looking for ill will and ill intent. It never works and it gets actually to be dangerous, I found. But really looking to just educate where you can in light of your core values and your purpose. Does that make sense?
It does, and I mean, my answer, and I know you're not necessarily looking for an answer, but it's kinda like, okay, I've gotta start with my children, and it's funny you say don't go out there policing because they will come and they'll be upset about something, and I'm like, "Okay, you don't understand where they're coming from, that's their opinion, you may not be of the same opinion, but you just listen, you hear them out, and if they give you an opportunity to speak, you say your piece," but it's very important, like, we're not gonna get anywhere if you're like, "You're wrong." I mean, the finger pointing and all of that's just useless. But I struggle. It's like, well, where can I go? I can start with my kids, and that is first and foremost. We need to start there so that they are putting out the message and they have the beliefs, that we hold near and dear to our heart, but I don't know, like, where is the next step? Like, where can I go? Where can I get involved to kind of spread that message and make a difference? That's where I struggle. I don't know where
So
to
I
go.
would start with your core values, and let's reframe that, Erin. Let's not call it a struggle. Let's call it a curiosity that you have.
Okay.
That sounds lighter, right?
Yeah.
Struggle sounds so difficult. Curiosity sounds light and airy and fun, right? So it's a beautiful question you're asking, and I applaud you for even asking it. And that's why I love this portion of the podcast, because look what everyone else is learning from you. And I hope all you listeners are taking what Erin's talking about and transposing it onto your own life, truly. So, Erin, where is it that your core values come in? Where do you like to show up in your community
Hmm.
and support people? And just pick one small niche. Maybe it's religious outlets, church, synagogue, whatever that may be. Maybe it's on the softball field or some sporting activity for you or your children.
Hmm.
And then do they have some kind of publication or some kind of a story of interest where you can kind of transpose who you are and your values into an educational piece? Now,
Hmm.
I can't give you more data than that, but I can give you an example. So, for instance, it's funny that you're talking about this topic. I had no idea what you were going to come to the table with because I never asked in advance. But 2 weeks ago, my husband and I had this incident, and we're both immigrants, so we're kind of used to being discriminated against. And I don't say that mockingly or poor me. It's just people are different. And growing up in Indiana, I didn't look like anybody else. I didn't sound like anybody else. So it was then. But by the time I got into college, it never happened until about 2 years ago in a professional organization. It happened gender wise. And then 2 weeks ago, my husband and I were out on a walk in a different subdivision, and some neighbor walked up to us and followed us. And then he's like, "What are you doing here?" And it was like so weird because it was like,
Oh my gosh.
like a mile from our house. And we just got tired of walking in our own neighborhood because of COVID. And we walked in somebody else's. And it was just the most bizarre incident ever. And he looked at us and he said, "Well, you would ask me the same if I was in your neighborhood." And my husband looked at each other, and we came home, we talked about it, and we're like, "Yeah, no, we wouldn't have. We wouldn't
Hmm.
have done all that. We may have just looked to be good neighbors and do the neighborhood police watch thing and look for people that we've never seen in our neighborhood, but we would have never have acted on it the way this gentleman did." And then, so that was one incident. And maybe I'm not saying that you're looking for discrimination against you, but
Hmm.
when that happened, my husband and I talked about it, and we were not happy about that, right? It just had not happened in so long. And I thought, well, what's one thing I can do to give this voice so I can heal and also to help other people? So I wrote a blog post article about it. And I spread it far and wide, and it was not accusatory. It truly wasn't. It's on my website for what it's worth. It was really, what did I learn from this? And how did I forgive him? And I prayed for that guy. I mean, I felt for him, not from pity or anger, but like, I really hoped he could see life differently because he was coming from fear. And
Hmm.
so that's how I made my contribution. And then on social media, somebody started sharing it and saying, "This is meaningful." And I thought those words meant something. And that is what a legacy meant to me, right? That
Hmm.
something I experienced that could have been a negative, I turned it into an educational experience and shared it with others. And people found it meaningful, and maybe they learned something. And whether they're whatever side they're on, right? It doesn't matter to me. So, where can you share something that you know about in terms of George Floyd and discrimination and diversity? You do not have to be an expert on it. Most
Right.
people stop and think, "Well, I'm not, I'm an advisor, I'm a mom, I'm a wife. What do I have to say about this?" It doesn't matter. With social media, there's such a beautiful platform. Just share what you want people to know. And
That's
this is
true.
where most clients say, "Well, I don't want to offend clients, I don't want to offend people, I don't want to offend colleagues." What about legacy building and sharing your true voice and not just your belief, but your humanity could possibly offend others if you
Hmm.
come from what I teach is a fantastic brand? It's direct plus kind. If you're not
Hmm.
kind, your brand is just direct, which equals brash. And that
Hmm.
doesn't sit well with people. So the easiest thing is to start journaling about this, Erin. I would put out a journal, and since you're going to be on vacation next week, it's perfect timing, and start journaling just your random thoughts on where you can bring voice to this. And by where, I mean what you would like to say about it, and then where would you put it? Don't worry about the hows. How's this going to get done? Don't worry about that right now. Just think of content and emotion. Why is this important to you? So look at the whys and the wheres. Like, where would this message be best received from your mind, right?
Okay.
Would it be church? Would it be at the softball field? I would think it would be really nice in the softball field with your kids, because the notion of separation versus oneness starts very young. We inherently, accidentally teach our children that we're all different and that one is good, one is bad. And we don't even need to do that as good parents. It just happens because we applaud our children, which means we're not applauding somebody else's child. Perhaps that's how it happens. But it creates distinctions that are not healthy. And so really helping people see that, hey, we're all part of a community. One person is a good batter, one person is really good on third base, and that brings the team together. So perhaps that's the educational value. And starting with children is so important, right? Developing those brands at that age where they don't even look at the color distinction. We're all just human, and everyone's got a contribution to make to the greater whole. So if any of that resonates, noodle on that. I don't really want you to have an answer right now or for a while. It's something that'll develop and you'll be inspired. It'll just hit you. So you know what I'm going to say. You're going to need to color as you're thinking about this.
Yes, that's the first thing that came to my mind when you said journaling. I was like, color.
For clients who've been through my programs, you all know that you have to exercise your creative brain before you can get these juices flowing. You have to start, and coloring is the easiest way to do it, folks. So hopefully that's a good tip for the listeners. And see where that self-expression takes you, and be open to it taking you to some places you never expected. That's where the gems are. Things that I couldn't even think of to tell you to do, but you inherently, deep down in your soul, you've accomplished so much, and that was based on your gut instinct. So your gut's ready to tell you what to do. You just have to sit on it and enjoy the process.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. You always make things simpler for me. Thank you. You're giving me a good starting point. I try and just, overblow things.
I'm glad. It's a really good question. So are you in a good place to stop on that question?
Yes.
All right. Awesome. So any last words you want to leave us with, Erin? Any last thoughts?
I don't think so. I think just kind of what we were talking about. Like, I just wish, everybody could do a good job, make a conscious effort to be as kind as possible. And Katy, like you and I have talked about it before, like I make it a point to, when I'm walking on a street, which I guess I don't do too much of lately, but I walk with my head and my eyes up, and I, try and make eye contact and smile and say hi to as many people as possible. Cause I think that the world just needs kindness, and making a connection. However, you don't know, the connection, or me saying hi to somebody walking on the street, that could be the only human connection that they have in an entire day. And so I try and do that as much as possible to bring a smile to somebody's face.
What a beautiful note to end on. I mean, we're just going to put a pin in it right there, because it couldn't have been any more beautifully said, my friend Erin. That's a stellar brand. It's someone that brings kindness and caring into the world, just to people out there. And this has always been true, but you're right, especially these days. People don't know. I see people act out of aggression, and I'm like, what is wrong with you? And then I stop and think, there's so much fear and pent-up aggression, and people kind of feeling trapped. And so people are acting unlike themselves. And so just giving people a pass and coming at them with compassion and kindness and not judging them is fantastic. So thank you. Thank you for that bit. So thank you for joining me, Erin, and giving me your time and your expertise. I hope that you enjoyed the process as much as I did. And to all you listeners out there, take this material. I hope you put it to good use. Erin and I both hope that's the case. If you want to get a hold of Erin, where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. My last name is Bethge, and my first name is Erin, Erin. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Fantastic. So you can find Erin Bethge on LinkedIn. It's Beth with GE at the end, Bethge. And we hope you enjoyed this broadcast. Please share it with others if you think it'll be of value to them, and go out there and make a difference and find your greatness in your brand. And until next time, Katy G out.